Hey everybody, Ben Dorr here. I'm the Executive Director for Minnesota Gun Rights, and I have very important information for all gun owners and Second Amendment voters in Senate District 5. You're going to want to hear where your candidates stand in the August 9th Republican primary coming up very soon. I have information for you guys on where your candidates stand, what they will do, and what they have done or not done in office, and it's all coming up right after this. All right, everybody, as I said, I'm Ben Dorr with Minnesota Gun Rights, and our job as a Second Amendment issue advocacy organization is to survey candidates running for office and give those results to you. It's our job to tell you who's pro-gun, who's anti-gun, who's paying lip service, so you guys have all of the facts coming into the August 9th Republican primary. So what we did is we sent a candidate survey we have a three-way primary in Senate District 5, and we sent a survey to all three of these candidates, Dale Anderson, Bret Bussman, and Paul Utke, to find out where they stand on the issues. There's 10 questions in there, but we're just going to highlight 5 for right now. We don't want this video to take 100 years. So we're going to go through the major ones and give you some details on what your candidates are saying. We'll start right here in the middle. We'll start with Bret Bussman, okay? So we sent him a survey and we asked him, what do you think about red flag gun confiscation laws? Red flag gun confiscations and statewide gun registration are the two biggest gun control bills that Senate and House Democrats and some rhinos are pushing in St. Paul. It's what they want the most. Red flag laws would take away your firearms, would allow them to be taken away without due process, without being charged with a crime, without being arrested, indicted, convicted. None of those things. No due process, and they would take away your firearms simply because somebody complained about you. And the U.S. Senate, it was just signed by our dumb, addle-brained President Joe Biden, just signed nearly $1 billion in funding to bribe states to pass red flag laws. And so we asked him, where do you stand? And Bret Bussman said, I will be an absolute no vote on red flag gun confiscation laws if I am the next senator for Senate District 5. Next, we asked him about stand your ground law. Everybody knows what stand your ground is. 38 states have it already. It simply says you can defend yourself if you're attacked without having to retreat. What a novel idea. You can actually defend yourself. Minnesota needs this badly. And he said that not only would he be a proponent for it, that he would support it on a general cause, he said he would absolutely sponsor the bill and push for record roll call votes in the Senate. Now, that's important, and I'll tell you about it. I'll tell you why in just a minute. The next thing, he's talking about SEPA, the Second Amendment Preservation Act. A huge piece of pro-gun legislation was introduced in the House by Representative Eric Mortensen during this previous legislative session. And SEPA takes away the Fed's ability to use state resources to implement their federal gun control, which is how all of this stuff is implemented anyway. This legislation got passed in Missouri a while back. The DOJ under Merrick Garland is furious about it, and they keep suing Missouri, but they keep losing because it's constitutional under the anti-commandeering doctrine in our United States Constitution. And Bret Bussman said he will absolutely be a chief sponsor on SEPA law if he becomes the next senator from Senate District 5. So that would be a huge piece of pro-gun legislation for Minnesota. The next question was on the so-called assault weapons ban. We all know what that is. Some people say that it's just AR-15s, and some people are confused and think it's automatic weapons, which are essentially illegal anyway. No, the assault weapons ban, as it's been written in Congress and it's being pushed all over the place, bans all kinds of rifles, hundreds of different rifles, along with semi-automatic pistols, shotguns, deer rifles, hunting rifles, all kinds of things. So they want to make it sound like it's going to ban big, scary automatic machine guns. The reality is it'll ban all kinds of common use, everyday firearms that we all use. he said very easily that this would be an absolute hell no vote for him. So he gets a green check mark for that one. So we got green check mark on red flags, stand your ground, SEPA, and now the assault weapons ban. And now finally we have statewide gun registration. The Democrats, they like to call it universal background checks, that's what the media likes to call it. And even some rhinos have co-sponsored this legislation in the Senate in the past, like Paul Anderson, for example. Former senator, Republican Senator Paul Anderson. So we asked him, what do you think about statewide gun registration, giving a list of guns and gun owners to the state of Minnesota? He said absolutely no, and he would be an absolute no vote on this. So he gets, Bret Bussman gets a green check mark for that as well. Again, we had 5 more questions, and I'll tell you, he answered all of them 100%. Not 90%, not 85%, 100% pro-gun. So if you see Bret Bussman, thank him for taking a courageous stance on the Second Amendment and standing up and fighting for this. Then we have Dale Anderson, also a 100% candidate survey on red flags, stand your ground, SEPA, the assault weapons ban, so-called, and statewide gun registration. I haven't seen much about Dale online or in the news or on social media or really anywhere else. So I'm not sure how much of a campaign's being run. It looks like, just based on the polls and things, it's maybe coming down to Bret Bussman and Paul Utke, but he did fill out his candidate survey 100% pro-gun. So if you see Dale, be sure to give him a thank you as well when it comes to his Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire. And now, this brings us down to Paul Utke, and I'm afraid I don't have much good news about Paul. And this would be a little bit of a story because he is the current incumbent from Senate District 2. Now, that has all been redistricted, and the Park Rapids area, which I'm very familiar with, has now become part of Senate District 5. So you have to make sure you live in the right region when you're looking at Senate District 5. Don't look at the old SD5. Look at the new one under the redistricting laws. And so Paul Utke first won his election to the Minnesota Senate in the 2016 elections. He was running against a Democrat at that time named Rod Skoy. Now, Minnesota Gun Rights, at that time, we spent a huge amount of donor dollars in SD2 exposing the fact that Rod Skoy had been a no vote on constitutional carry in the Senate during a vote in 2015. So we went door to door in Park Rapids. Like I said, I know your district very well. Been up there, had family that lived up there. And we went door to door all the way up Senate District 2. At that time, it went all the way up to the Canadian border. And we dropped all the houses, radio ads, social, the whole thing, exposing the fact that at that time, Paul Utke had promised that he was going to fight for gun owners, and that Rod Skoy had been a no vote on the biggest piece of pro-gun legislation that the Minnesota Senate has touched ever since. So gun owners went to war, metaphorically speaking. They went to the polls, and gun owners tossed out Rod Skoy and replaced Rod with Paul Utke. Okay, so that was in 2016. So we have 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. There's been 7 legislative sessions since then. And now, what has the history of Paul Utke been? And I want to remind you that ever since that election in 2016, Republicans have held the Senate majority ever since then. So there's never been a time that the Democrats were controlling the committee process or anything else in the Minnesota Senate. So we come into 2022, and Paul Utke has refused to fill out his Minnesota gun rights questionnaire like he did in 2016. And so you're asking yourself, why? Paul's a nice guy. I've known him for many years. And the truth is that when Paul got to St. Paul, He had promised to introduce stand your ground law. He didn't. He did actually introduce one piece of pro-gun legislation in the first couple of weeks of his first legislative session. But it became clear as time went on, and we continued to meet with Paul Utke at his office in St. Paul, and we would say, what are we going to do on stand your ground and constitutional? What are we going to do on these major pieces of pro-gun legislation? We need to pass them through the Senate and send it over to the House. At that time in 2017 and 2018, Republicans controlled the House and the Senate. And of course, we had Governor Mark Dayton, who was old and feeble at that time. It was our best chance to pass pro-gun bills through the Minnesota House, through the Minnesota Senate, and force Governor Mark Dayton's hand. And Paul said that no, he had introduced the one pro-gun bill, but he wasn't really interested in pushing anything else. And he wasn't going to push it onto the floor. And that was in 2017. So here we go. You fast forward. So in 2018, we went to him, Paul, look, this is our shot. We were coming up on the midterms, right? President Trump's midterms. We knew it was going to be a really tough year for Republicans. This was our chance as a gun rights community to pass major pro-gun bills. And Paul said, look, man, party leadership doesn't want to touch these bills. And I said, Paul, who gives a flip what party leadership wants? You promised to advocate on behalf of these issues for gun owners. It's your job. You're the only one who can do it. Push stand your ground, push constitutional carry, introduce the stand your ground bill. No. So another year went by, and Paul Utke did nothing to advance the Second Amendment in the Senate. We all know what happened in 2018. We lost the House. Democrats took control. We had Tim Walz won, so he's now the new governor in Minnesota. And now they want gun control. I went to Paul Utke again, and I said, Paul, look at this. The Democrats want to push all of this gun control. They want red flag laws. They want statewide gun registration. They want all of these things. The best defense is a good offense. We need to put these pro-gun bills on the Senate floor. We need to get some votes. Make the Democrats in the House choke on these bills. Make them stop them. And he said, no, the Senate Majority Leader, he doesn't want that. No, we're not doing that. It's not the right time. 2019 legislative session, same story. 2020 legislative session, same story. But in 2020, when Paul Utke was up for re-election in Senate District 2, we sent him his candidate survey, and we expected him to fill it out 100%, like Bret Bussman has done and Dale Anderson. And what we got back instead was a letter chastising us for not being kind enough to other politicians. That we hadn't been winsome enough. We hadn't been sweethearty enough to the politicians in St. Paul. And he was not going to fill out our candidate survey, and he sure as hell wasn't going to push any pro-gun bills in the Minnesota Senate. Well, at that time, Paul Utke had no challenger in the primary, and it seemed very likely that the Democrat would lose, which is exactly what happened. 2021, 2022, same story. No action. No standing up and fighting for stand your ground, no fighting for constitutional carry or the Second Amendment Preservation Act. His bill, the pro-gun bill that he did introduce in 2017, long dead. And so what happened in 2022? Well, Paul Utke sends in his candidate survey. That's strange. He didn't send it in 2020 because he didn't have a challenger. and he didn't need to court the vote of gun owners. But now that Bret Bussman is challenging him, now that that's happening, now that the GOP, the local GOP party, took the endorsement away from Paul Utke and gave it to Bret Bussman because of Paul's big government stance on a lot of different issues, well, now Paul Utke sends in his Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire, and it's 100% filled out. Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? But what are we going to get with Paul Utke in 2023? More, oh, now's not the time? More, maybe some other year? More, oh, legislative leadership doesn't want me to push these pro-gun bills? More, all of that? Come on, Paul. So he filled out his Minnesota gun rights candidate survey, but when it comes to these issues, what did he do for gun owners in the Senate? He has been lazy. He has been weak. He has done whatever legislators told him to do. Whatever the party leadership says. Whatever Senate leadership says. On the other hand, Bret Bussman, who got the GOP endorsement, has promised in writing to be the state's leading advocate and push for these votes in the Senate. Dale Anderson has also filled out his Minnesota gun rights candidate survey, 100% pro-gun. And so has Paul Utke. But it seems you fooled gun owners in 2016 and you fooled them ever since. So, do us a favor. If you see Dale Anderson, be sure to thank him for filling out his Minnesota gun rights candidate questionnaire, 100% pro-gun. If you see Bret Bussman, thank him for taking a strong stance on the Second Amendment. It's not hard. It shouldn't be hard. If you're a Second Amendment supporter, it should not be hard to put your name on paper and say, this is what I believe deeply, and this is what I will fight for. The radical left wants to annihilate our country. They want to annihilate our freedoms. I live in lower state Minnesota, and I have to watch every day as the radical left, liberals, are pushing an agenda that resembles nothing like I want for the world. I want a freedom-loving world. I want a constitutional America. I want our Second Amendment rights taken care of, protected, advanced, and cherished. And Bret Bussman has promised to do those things if he becomes the next senator from Senate District 5. If you happen to see Paul Utke, I think he should apologize. I think you should tell him to apologize for being weak when he should have been strong, for being lazy when he should have been energetic, and fight for gun owners. And I'll say this, Paul's a really nice guy. He's a nice fellow. Talked to him many, many times. He's a really, really pleasant person. But American politics is one of political war now. There's a culture war on to annihilate everything we care about. And Paul Utke has been tired. He's been weak. And he has not fought for gun owners. And he's protected politicians instead of protecting and advancing the rights of law-abiding gun owners. So if you see Paul Utke, tell him to apologize for not fighting for the Second Amendment. And when you go out to vote on Tuesday, August 9th in the Republican primary in Senate District 5, be sure to go out and vote pro-gun. Thanks, guys.